Executive Director at Reconnect Rochester. And Cody, I think I'm going to let you introduce Henry since I don't know what his position is or what to say about him.
Okay, well, I'll let Henry introduce himself. Henry, go ahead.
Okay, take it away.
Hi, my name is Henry Litsky. I'm the Policy and Advocacy Coordinator with Reconnect Rochester. So it's great to be here with you all and be able to talk about what we do and some of our work that's pertinent to all of us across New York State.
Yeah. So Barbara, I don't know if you have more introductory things, but I can otherwise just get right into it.
Just go right into it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Well, can everyone see my screen? Okay. Great. So, this is kind of modeled after an engagement breakfast that we have quarterly at our office. So if you know anybody that missed tonight's meeting and is local to Monroe County and wants to kind of get this spiel again, they're welcome to come for our breakfasts. We publish the dates right away at the beginning of the year for the whole year. It's just a great opportunity to connect with 25 or so people who kind of share an interest in transportation issues and walking and biking and public transportation, and you get a free breakfast out of it. um, but I'll just go through some of our work as Reconnect Rochester. And then Henry's going to give a little more of a substantive update on the 25-mile-an-hour efforts to the speed limit reduction efforts that are going on statewide. And then we can kind of open it up for discussion. But I do want to thank your member Tess, who serves on our advocacy committee, and she's the Rochester Bicycling Coalition advocacy coordinator as well. And she kind of made this connection with Barbara and everyone. So just want to recognize and thank Tess. Unfortunately, she had something else going on tonight, couldn't be here, but yeah, so Reconnect Rochester was started about 15 or so years ago. It was, came out of a group of people who are interested in reviving some kind of, mass transit system in Rochester. They talked about the Rochester subway and the history with that and some of the streetcar systems, and it's really focused on public transportation as a starting point. And over the years, the mission and the vision has kind of grown to include all modes of what you might call alternative transportation. So our mission is whether by bus, by rail, on bike, or on foot, Reconnect Rochester is a champion for transportation choices. And we hope that that enables a more vibrant and equitable community. So, over the years, we also merged with the Rochester Cycling Alliance and brought in a whole bunch of bicycling advocates. But today, you have a membership of Reconnect Rochester supporters and newsletter subscribers and just kind of participants in a lot of our activities that are interested in better buses and being able to safely ride or walk places, or to be able to just have safer streets for our community. So we are trying to accomplish that mission so that anyone, regardless of their physical or economic ability, can get around our community. And when we say our community, we specifically are focused on Monroe County. So all the towns, villages, and City of Rochester in Monroe County. And we kind of clarified that a few years ago in our strategic planning. Like, we don't work a lot in Ontario County. We don't work in Wayne County. We're not regional like some of our counterpart agencies. And as we grow, we're just trying to do a really good job with Monroe County and advocating at the state, federal, and local level for issues that affect our county. And Reconnect's, base of members have really come from a lot of different places in terms of why they're motivated to do this work. And so just kind of showing a few of those here. There are a lot of folks for whom safety and, kind of children's safety, getting to and from school, safe routes to school, ability to go to playgrounds, and not be afraid of speeding cars. That's one of their big motivations. There are people who come from the health perspective. One of our biggest cycling advocates in the area is a medical doctor, and there's also a huge environmental movement that we partner closely with. The Climate Solutions Accelerator is one of the big entities in the area that does that work. Um, And then social and economic equity, trying to focus on, rectifying a lot of the wrongs that were done to Black and Brown communities in the past, and trying to center equity in the work that we do. So Henry and I were just at the Interloop North meeting. One of the big things that our transportation system did from the 1950s onward was build giant highways through the center of a lot of our urban areas. So with the Interloop project and the I-81 takedown in Syracuse and some other projects that are going on, we're starting to see some of the rectification and rebuilding of those neighborhoods. So we're kind of coming at it from a lot of perspectives, and as a sort of, as a necessity and as a joy, we work with a lot of local partners on this. So we have a lot of touch points with a lot of organizations coming at it from a lot of different perspectives. Common Ground Health from the health perspective, Rochester Monroe Anti-Poverty Initiative from the equity perspective, and then some emerging partnerships with the New Americans, the organizations that serve New Americans in our community, who tend to rely on walking, biking, and taking public transportation as their way of getting around. So we're a staff that's grown. We had 1.5, I think, 1.5 staff back in 2018, and we've grown to 7 people now in 2025. We are, really focused on expanding our capacity because there are a lot more needs than we can ever possibly meet. But we have a great team that is working day in and day out on these issues to expand transportation options throughout our county. So that day-to-day work, I'm just going to quickly go through some of the big headlines. One is our programs and projects. So just last week, we had our Rochester Street Films. It was focused on downtown walkability in downtown Rochester. And that's an annual event where we take over the Little Theater and have about 200 of our closest friends to watch a documentary film and have a panel discussion about a specific topic. We have something that we call on-street projects. They're something, if you might have heard of tactical urbanism, but it's basically a temporary installation of how you could make an intersection or a street safer. And I'm actually gonna, if the technology cooperates, I'm gonna show a very short film about our Complete Streets makeover that we did this year. And we also center the voices of public transit writers in our work. So we do a lot of survey work and a collection of stories with transit ambassadors to inform how we advocate to our transit system, which is the Regional Transit System, RTS, here in Rochester. And then we have a whole slew of bike education and bike programming that range from education and training courses for adults, for kids, to local history bike tours where you get to learn about some of the history of Rochester through the ages by getting around on your bike, as well as Georgia Eastman bike tour. And then community rides that we partner with the City of Rochester and the town of Brighton on just a weekly ride throughout the summer that allows people to kind of plug into bicycling and get to know it a little bit better. So now here's the challenge. Let's see if I've got my screen share, advanced sharing options. I'm gonna try to make sure I can share the audio, but it should. Yeah, let's give it a try. Can you hear that?
The audio is not coming through.
The audio is not coming through. All right. Oh, here we go. Share computer sound. All right.
Alan Beck. We're actually
Perfect.
We are at the Complete Streets Makeover for Avenue D at Holland Beck. We're actually going to take over the intersection for the day, have a huge block party. We're going to paint the intersection with a mural with butterflies, and we're also going to install some traffic calming features as well.
This really started with our call for submissions, our call for nominations back in August of 2024. Avenue D and Holland Beck Street really stood out as a great candidate for this project for this year.
Because there was a perceived safety issue from the community.
I know in the morning, during a weekday, there's 5 bus stops. We have kids that go to the Avenue D Rec Center, and this intersection, they go through so fast that we've had accidents and we've had people get hit.
And we looked at the data, we found that there were high speeds, there were incorrect turning movements, and there were some unsafe situations for pedestrians walking across these crosswalks here. So a complete street is a street design type that encompasses all modes of transportation and all people. So whether that's you're riding a bike, you're taking a car, you're taking a bus, you're riding a scooter, or you're walking. So it's not just somebody that's able-bodied. We're also looking at everybody that has to have accessible modes like wheelchairs, and then also elderly and young kids as well.
So we then called the community back together in February for a community input session. We called you all here today because nobody knows what it's like to walk on Avenue D and Holland Street better than the people who walk, work, and play here every single day.
The reason why I kind of put in for that intersection to have the complete makeover is because there's a lot of kids in that section right there that kind of run across the street to get to either the playground, the rec center, or to the church.
Where we asked them to really describe, some of the issues they face as pedestrians and cyclists in this area, as well as some ideas they may have for solutions on how to make those better. Let's settle in and start to talk about what we brainstormed with each group.
Our biggest issues are the north-south traffic problem between Hollenbeck and Hollenbeck.
We've got raised crosswalks here, 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 and here.
Possibly putting in some kind of either ballards or even like a pedestrian island to force the traffic to either slow down or stop cutting that corner.
And creating bump outs, because not only is traffic going quickly, but visibility is a bit of a challenge.
Building community, play, safety, youth were sort of the words that came to mind when we were discussing what that mural could embody. Bulletin boards, small book library, and uplifting the R Center.
After that, we also went to school number 8. We were able to connect with a bunch of youth there. We sent that input off to Stantec, the engineering team that is a major partner for this project.
We take those design ideas and we create something that's street implementable and approved by the traffic control board of the city. So this is a very unique intersection, right? Because it is a skewed intersection or offset intersection. As you get drivers to go straight across, take a diagonal, which creates an unsafe situation because they do it at a higher speed than if you were to turn onto the street. So what we're doing here is we're installing a median of delineators to help accentuate the center line to limit those movements and actually prohibit any direct movements across the street and really persuade people to make those turns a little bit slower than they're used to.
How y'all doing? Y'all good? You don't want to pay no more? What you gonna do?
We go plan.
All right, go see what's up with the plan. I love working with the community. I love being out here and just talking to everybody that lives in the neighborhood. You said you be painting y'all. Oh, okay, so you already know what to do. We love it. We're gonna steal some paint from him. All right, we found some paint. The inspiration for the mural, we actually asked the neighborhood what they wanted to do, what they wanted to see, and we kind of like went off their vibe. There's a lot of unity, community, things that bring unity and community, which music, art. I think the butterflies just represent going with the flow and flowing over a lot of the negative stuff that we see in the neighborhood. I'm hoping that's what people get from it.
The empty lot that you see next to the intersection.
We're turning this lot into a space that hopefully will give a place for people to come and hang out, and it'll be brighter and more beautiful for the neighborhood. Enjoy the seats, enjoy looking at the flowers, post something on the community chalkboard that we're going to be putting up, grab a book from the free library, but just add something of value to a neighborhood that deserves it.
So a lot of our streets have not been designed with people in mind. They're often designed with, getting cars from point A to point B the fastest way possible. And so what we at Reconnect Rochester and with this project want to do is really think about how we can redesign the streetscape for people. We want to have people at the center of what we do and how we get to and from where we need to go for work, where we play, and where we live.
The ideal outcome for this project specifically would be to reduce turning speeds, reduce speeds on Avenue D, and really bring awareness to the intersection itself.
Our biggest thing is to slow people down, but not only that, because of the color schemes and what's put there, also to inspire hope.
And so we have this temporary installation for the traffic equipment here to show what can be done to redesign the streets to make it more people-centered.
We're trying something unique here with this offset intersection that I'm hoping that the city can gather data from and take to other places like this.
I think this is the beginning of turning Rochester around, where it's not as violent, or more vibrant.
Okay. Well, I went over to Avenue D and Hollenbeck over the weekend, actually, just to check out how it was looking. And we expect some of the paint would fade over the next year or so, but we actually have a budget for the next 4 years that includes refreshing the paint so that it's kind of fresh and vibrant every couple of years. We're in the process of identifying next year's Complete Streets makeover. But the idea there is that we've done it in 5, it's our fifth location. And the idea is that you could have temporary traffic calming and speed, kind of speed reduction installations that the city could then potentially make permanent. And the very first Complete Streets makeover that we did, they actually did install a raised intersection, so it slows cars down when it gets to that intersection, and that was where the project was installed. So I think that's kind of the hope is that it would lead to some long-term changes. And so just really quick, I'll mention that Henry and I do a lot of the advocacy. So we're working with everyone from you see in that photo at the top right, the mayor, the county executive, the congressman Joe Morelli, Senator Schumer on the bottom there announcing an investment in bike infrastructure last year. We won't get too much into the follow-up on that, but that has been some challenges to make sure that those grants keep moving forward. And so we are trying to work at every level to influence policy. The City of Rochester has announced Vision Zero, which is a street safety, safer streets initiative to make city streets safer for pedestrians, bicyclists, and all road users, and kind of reduce crashes, and especially the harmful outcomes of those crashes. And I'm going to quickly pivot over to Henry to talk about 25 miles an hour, because that's one of the really key kind of efforts that we've been supporting to increase street safety in Rochester, but also in all the eligible towns and villages that New York State law allows them to do. So I'll just wrap up by saying that we have a ton of content on our website and blog, social media, including a crash map. We've mapped using data that New York State DOT collects. We've mapped every single bike and pedestrian crash that's occurred over the last 10 years on our website, to give the community a resource to see like what have been some of the trends on their local roads, their local streets, and kind of help inform advocates who want to ask the city or the county or the state to do something about their local roads. And we're also available to do media. I see some of our staff speaking on the radio. We try to get the message out kind of every way we can. So with that, I just cognizant of time and wanting to make sure there's plenty of time for discussion. I'll hand it over to Henry to talk about the 25 mile an hour transition.
Well, thank you so much, Cody. And all right, so I guess we'll jump on into it. So I'm going to talk about some of our 25 mile per hour work. So just to start out, as Cody mentioned, we are primarily focused on Monroe County, New York, but this 25 mile per hour work is part of our New York State Safe Streets Coalition, which encompasses the entirety of New York State. There's over 150 organizations and dignitaries. And if you as an individual or any organizations would be interested in getting involved, feel free to let us know, and we can put you in contact with those folks, basically working to pass safe streets legislation across the state of New York to impact us all. So we can move on to the next slide. So to some ground setting here, the United States is a significant outlier on traffic safety. Our roads are a lot more dangerous than a lot of our peer nations. And this is a trend that has only been getting worse over the past 10 years. So let's go to the next slide. So as you see here, the numbers are quite staggering. In 2021, we had that peak of roadway fatalities of 43,000 individuals. That is a staggering loss, but luckily we've seen some trends reversing at a nationwide level. And we'll go to the next slide. You see locally, New York State, we are headed in the wrong direction. This is some fatal crash data from ITSMR. It's one of the two main aggregate crash data statistics here. And you can see that in our vulnerable road users, it's pedestrians and cyclists, we have a really staggeringly high number of fatalities and serious injuries. Of course, these serious injuries are life-altering, and it's just kind of staggering that one individual will lose their life every single day due to traffic violence across our state. So what can we do about this? Well, safe speeds are a proven safety countermeasure. I love to step back and let's look at places that are actively working on these issues and where they're succeeding. So Helsinki is a city with over 700,000 people, Helsinki, Finland, and they just went an entire year without any traffic fatalities, which is quite a staggering measure. And you can see here in the corner of my slide, they do have several really large arterial highways. They have urban freeways in their city, not unlike a lot of our cities across New York State. And one of the key metrics that they used to reduce traffic fatalities was to lower speed limits. That was a key policy solution they implemented through various methods. So let's head to the next slide here. So why does slowing speeds actually help to increase safety? Well, first of all, lowering or as a vehicle travels higher, the risk of death increases exponentially once you cross over 25 miles per hour. NACTO, which is the kind of a association of transportation officials, is recommending speeds less than 25 miles per hour. And of course, in Helsinki, where they've achieved Vision Zero, most of their speed limits are set to under 18 miles per hour. And that's kind of how they've been able to reduce fatalities. If we go to the next slide. This is a nice graphic kind of illustrating the same graph that we saw on the previous slide, that when a vehicle travels faster, the risk of a pedestrian who's getting hit by that vehicle dies just rapidly increases exponentially. That's due to just the mass of the vehicle traveling faster. So we'll go to the next slide. Slower speeds also prevent crashes before they even happen. So a vehicle that is traveling slower, the driver will have an increased field of vision, allowing them to see more of what's going on around the vehicle in the streetscape ahead of them. This allows you to anticipate that there's a ball coming into the street and slow down because there's probably a child going after the ball. Another reason is that when you're traveling faster, your stopping distance increases again exponentially. That's a factor of just physics. When your vehicle is heavier, it takes more space for it to slow down across distance. You can see in this graph on the bottom here, the reaction time is roughly the same, but your braking distance for your brakes to actually stop the vehicle is significantly increased. So we'll go to the next slide. Now, it's not just in Helsinki. We do have some data in the United States proving that lowering speed limits by itself does wonders to reduce speeding and therefore achieve safety gains. So the Institute for Highway Safety did a very rigorous study comparing Boston to Providence, Rhode Island. Boston lowered their speed limits to 25 miles per hour in 2017, and they found that the odds of a driver exceeding 35 miles per hour dropped almost 30%. Now, this might not make sense on its face, but in an urban environment, the majority of your streets are one lane in each direction, and just one driver following the new posted speed limit slows the entire system down, which therefore increases safety. So we'll go to the next slide. It's also important to note that this isn't really unique. A lot of states, 22 states, already default to 25 miles per hour. The state of New York has had this de facto 30 mile per hour area-wide speed limit for a long time, and this changed in 2022, as we'll get to the next slide here. So in 2022, Governor Hochul passed a law which allows cities, villages, towns with over 50,000 people, and towns that are classified as a suburban town are eligible to lower their area-wide speed limits. So we're gonna get into what an area-wide speed limit is later on. So what do you need to do to actually lower your speed in your own town? There's really three steps. That's a fourth step, which we'll get into on the next slide. But you get a certified professional engineer to do an engineering investigation. Once the engineering investigation is complete, that articulates which roadways in your town you are going to lower. You're then going to pass a resolution saying we're now going to do 25 on said roadways, and then you'll replace your signs and you'll go ahead. So we'll go to the next slide. So again, it's not every single municipality in the state. You may be wondering, what is a suburban town? It's basically a legal definition. This is a photo of the list here. You can also look up this list online, or we'd be happy to provide it to you. But there's kind of a set list of towns that are in that classification. So it's also important to note, if we can go back to the previous slide, only local roads that are controlled by your town are eligible to be as part of this law and have their speed limit lowered. So this map here that is on the screen is kind of the south corner of Rochester. You can see the purple streets here are the City of Rochester streets. Green streets are owned and maintained by the town. That's the town of Brighton in this situation. Those red roadways are by New York State DOT roadways, and those blue roadways are county DOT. So this law only applies to those green streets. It's going to be mostly your neighborhood streets in your towns and villages. So we'll go to the next slide. So we're not going to get too far into the weeds here, but long story short, typically municipalities lowered speed limits through engineering studies using a linear speed limit that's generally on a shorter corridor and of one particular area. It has extensive data requirements and it takes a lot of time, but an area-wide speed limit requires a engineering investigation. Now, engineering investigations are a lot more or a lot simpler for municipalities to go ahead and achieve. You are doing minimal data collection. Most municipalities will have this data on hand using functional class maps and all these other kind of more detailed things, and also land use to make their analysis. We'll go to the next slide. So to emphasize how easy the engineering investigation can be, the city of Kingston, for example, just made a one-page PDF where they detailed their own engineering investigation to justify lowering speed limits, and that was their step in the process. All of these reports are available on the New York Safe Streets Coalition website, but basically you just have to have a professional engineer, which is certified in traffic operations. Basically, any city engineer or any consulting firm will have someone on hand which is able to do that. So we'll go to the next slide here. And so we might be thinking, well, does it work in New York? Well, yes. Luckily, some communities have already adopted, and we are seeing amazing results coming through. The city of Albany recently published that 19% reduction in personal injury crashes and 8% overall. Their 25 mile per hour area-wide speed limit was coupled at the same time as rolling out automated speed enforcement in school zones. In Cohoes, New York, they saw some great turnarounds as well, Schenectady. So we're seeing municipalities across the state lowering their speed limits and immediately seeing safety gains. So we'll go to the next slide here. So again, 13 villages, 7 cities, and 2 suburban towns have already gone through and lowered their area-wide speed limits. I don't remember the exact number, but I believe it's over 100 or so municipalities across the state are eligible for lowering their area-wide speed limits. And we just want to help to spread the word that folks are able to make this critical safety measure to lower their speed limits and save lives on their own streets that they control. So we'll go to the next slide. As an additional resource, a lot of folks have been talking about automated speed enforcement. It's really important that if you or your town is looking to incorporate automated speed enforcement to encourage behavior change and slow vehicles down, that you do it equitably and fairly. Otherwise, the program will explode with a lot of public opposition. this report here by the Vision Zero Network called Fair Warnings really goes into nationwide best practices on what municipalities should be doing to set a successful camera program that effectively changes driver behavior, right? These programs are not about collecting revenue. It's about improving safety for all of us on our streets so that we can safely walk around and just exist in the public right of way. And I believe that is the end there.
Thank you, Henry. So we'll just wrap up by saying if you ever want to get involved, there's lots of ways you can get involved. Sign up for our newsletter and take a look at our content, share our blog posts, Instagram, etc. And with that, we're available for questions, conversation, discussion, and I will also try to share the actual slides. That would be helpful. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
So I've got a question. I can kick off the discussion here. That map that showed which streets would be affected was really interesting. So, I mean, when I think about speed hazards around me, I live in Penfield, and I guess our basic, well, I don't know. You know, we have arterials that have 35-mile-an-hour speed limits, but 50 is a really comfortable speed on those streets. So I don't know who set the third. I suspect that's county then. So we couldn't affect that, or we'd have to do this at a county level or something. I guess
That's a
I
great
was.
question.
I
Yeah.
mean, to me, it seems like we need some of those street redesign programs to affect the things that actually scare me the most. So I was hoping you were going to talk some more about those.
Yeah, so that is a much bigger hill to climb, I would say. The the roads that you're mentioning, Penfield Road, Empire Boulevard, it's like some of those that you can go 55 and it feels pretty comfortable. They are generally state-owned roads. Browncroft Boulevard, going
Yeah,
out
5 Mile
east,
Line
Five
Road,
Mile Line.
9 Mile Point.
So that's a slightly it's true that we can't lower speed limits on those roads under this law. We have started to enter dialogue with towns to start pressuring the state to grant them a lower speed limit. So going from, say, 45 posted speed limit to 40, even those small changes would make a difference. Henry's sharing some resources on how you could look up your the big road next to you and who owns that. So I think messaging to your town board and your town supervisors, if you live in a town that, you'd like to see slower speeds. The other aspect of this is New York State DOT's process for redoing roads, maintenance projects, construction projects. They don't have a really strong complete streets checklist that they're forced to follow. So you could end up, in a lot of cases, we end up with basically a project that mills down the existing pavement and then slaps on new pavement and redraws the same lines, and they don't add, sidewalks, they don't add bike lanes, they don't add curb bump outs, they don't pour concrete pads for bus stops or anything like that. So that's an effort that we've been pursuing with our Safe Streets Coalition to, through legislation, strengthen what DOT is required to do on state road projects for complete streets.
Mm. Sounds like we might want to join the Safe Streets Coalition.
We would love to have you.
Yeah. So you talked about automatic ticketing. So those cameras that tell you what speed they're going, can they trigger tickets? Is that what you were implying?
So not the cameras that are out today. If you see a camera that's saying, oh, you're traveling this speed, there's not a ticket system included in those. A lot of other counties across New York State have gotten or received authorization to have speed camera enforcement, whether that be at a red light, where basically if you go through the red light, it would issue a $50 ticket. If you were to, they have school zone speed enforcement. Syracuse just rolled their own program out, where basically if you speed in a school zone, they will issue a ticket. One of the really big high profile ones recently, the New York State DOT on the throughway system has roadwork speed cameras, where if you are passing a roadwork zone, they have automated cameras that if you're speeding over 10 miles per hour over the posted speed limit, they will issue you a camera. In Monroe County right now, we have, or I guess I'll let Cody talk about bus arm cameras. He's more of our in-house expert on that.
In Monroe County currently, we just have the bus patrol bus arm camera program, and it's based on school districts. So every school district has to opt into it. Their transportation provider, whatever bus company is their transportation provider, has to sign a contract with this company, and then they equip each bus with a camera. And when the stop arm is fully extended and the stop sign is out and the red lights are flashing and you're in a car, you're not supposed to pass them, it is taking pictures of at that moment, and video actually of that, and issuing tickets to true violations of passing a stop school bus. So in Monroe County, it's been there's about 6-7 districts that have been doing it for almost 2 years now. In Greece, it's a Greece school district. It's about 31 tickets per day that are issued. 31 cars have decided that it's okay to pass a stop school bus. And the City of Rochester is in the warning period right now. And I was in our county traffic safety board meeting yesterday where they reported that about 350 warning tickets per day in the City of Rochester are being issued. So that's 350 city residents who've decided it's okay to pass a stop school bus and put children in harm's way. The major difference with other automated enforcement is that the school bus camera has separate enabling legislation, and the fine is much higher. It's $250 for passing a stop school bus, whereas with other camera programs that Syracuse, Albany, and New York City have rolled out, in Suffolk County, New Rochelle, it's $50 for a ticket.
So has Greece done that long enough that they can say whether having those cameras on school buses has caused it to fall?
So the goal with a bus arm camera program is is behavior change and to have fewer tickets as the program is in place. It has gone down slightly in Greece. I think the word has gotten out, and there are fewer than before. There's still 31 per day, which is one too many. But the interesting stat that the county shares is that the recidivism rate, so the repeat offenders, is really low. It's only 3%. So when you get that first $250 ticket, you tend not to do it again.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. So in Monroe County, I think I saw that Irondequoit had done this earlier before, but are there other towns that it's made it to the town boards to lower the speed limit to 25?
Yeah, so we currently have 3 municipalities in Monroe County. So Irondequoit did it before the state enabling legislation, and we try not to talk about it. We don't want to get them in too much trouble, but they actually did it in a way, they did it in the complicated way. They did it the linear speed limit.
What does that mean?
It means they had to go through every single road and kind of look at the data and then kind of determine which roads. So you look at their town code and it's like every single street is named. They did it like the most difficult way administratively. Then Brighton was quick to jump on the new law in 2022. So they passed it pretty much immediately, like a couple months later. And so Brighton is 25. If you go, the signs are up in Brighton. If you go into the residential streets, you see it's 25 miles an hour. Then the town of Pittsford has passed the board resolution, but they have not completed the engineering study. So the signs are not up yet, but the town supervisor, who was just reelected, has reiterated that he intends to get that done in the next year. Other towns, we're intrigued by some of the new town supervisors and town boards that'll be coming into, Greece and Penfield and Perrington, and we're going to start meeting with those town supervisors next year to really spread the word about this.
And the city of Rochester has or has not done it?
City of Rochester is committed to do it in the Vision Zero plan, so the mayor is committed to doing it. We're right now it's sort of a timing issue. We're negotiating that with the city and city council. Essentially, they would like to see a camera program designed and vetted with the community, kind of through community conversation and public input, before they make the actual change to the signs and speed limit signs. It still has to go to city council to vote on it, but through our we do a candidate questionnaire every year, and I think through our candidate questionnaire we found there was almost universal support for that policy change at the city council level.
Can you just explain the camera thing? Because I know they took away their red light cameras because they had bad feelings.
Yeah, so we had red light cameras about 10 years ago, and that program, while it was effective at reducing crashes, it had the safety benefit that it intended to have. It was a very unpopular program because for a couple reasons. One was there was a real, not just a perceived, but a real distribution of the cameras in an inequitable way. They were mainly placed in low income parts of the city, which did happen to correspond to crash data, but when you do that kind of just following the crash data and placing them in low income areas, you have a real equity issue. So that's one issue they want to correct with a new camera program. Secondly, the city didn't have its own traffic violations bureau, so there was no easy way to argue the ticket. You would just kind of have to pay the ticket, and they didn't offer, in the past, they didn't offer any education or kind of payment plans or anything like that. Now the city does have a traffic violations bureau where you can negotiate all of that and plead your case. And then, the final issue is that it was really perceived as a cash grab because it was issuing a lot of tickets that weren't true violations. The technology wasn't that good, and so right turn on red, where it was perfectly legal to do that, they would have a camera up and they would issue a ticket for a valid right turn on red, or just a couple inches over the stop line. And so people just didn't feel like there was a fairness in that. So as we've advocated on the bus arm cameras, one of the things we advocated strongly for was consistency. So that there's a human that actually reviews the tickets and the video and makes sure, is it a true violation or not a true violation? And that's something that, for fairness sake, we want to make sure the ticket is issued for a true violation. And then the money that's collected for the program, honestly, I've talked to a lot of cities around the state, and there are not a lot of cities that are making any money off of this. Most of the money goes back to the vendor to operate the cameras and, pay for the signs and kind of, administer the program, pay for the staff to administer the program. But any money that does get generated from automated enforcement in the city of Rochester will go back to Safe Streets programs. So it will go back to funding kind of enhancements to the streetscape so that there's no sense of it going to the city's general fund or anything like that.
So I find that really interesting that the low-income neighborhoods are the ones with the highest crash rates, but I don't think there was ever a demand on their part to lower their crash rates and please put those red light cameras. But you can imagine a world where the neighborhood would say, we're at risk, we want more. So
yeah, it's a real double-edged.
Do you talk to neighborhood associations or?
Yeah, Yeah, so we've been doing a lot of that outreach with the neighborhood associations, and you saw our last project was in Avenue D and Hollenbeck, which is really one of the poorest parts of New York State, honestly. And I think we one of the things we'd like to talk about is there's been a historic disinvestment in those parts of the city, and street safety is definitely something that they deserve. So making sure that there's infrastructure investments, making sure that there is an equitable kind of attention to that, and at the same time, putting in place some kind of accountability mechanism for the drivers who choose to behave in an unsafe way. It's making sure that they can be safe walking to the bus stop, or driving around in their neighborhood. And so I don't anticipate that the camera deployment will look like that in the future. It's not going to be just focused on those neighborhoods. They're going to be in all four quadrants of the city. They're going to be, distributed along, potentially along school zones or potentially along commercial corridors. So it'll look a little bit different. But that said, I think where you have like a high number of crashes, it does require some kind of intervention. And we think the cameras are interesting because it also removes the police presence. I mean, you don't have police officers kind of sitting in a patrol car waiting for a speeding car to go by. It's a camera. It's objective. It takes the picture, and then we have video evidence that could be reviewed. And there's no interaction with a police officer at that point, so it kind of addresses some of that concern as well.
Judy,
got her
you have a
hand up.
question?
I'm wondering how it all came out at the corner of Avenue D and Hollenbeck there, where the people drew pictures in the street, and it was all very much community discussion on how to fix it. And all the, I don't know what you call them, pylons or whatever they were in the middle of the road. Is it working? Have you noticed any improvement in traffic patterns and whatnot?
Henry, do you want to jump in on that?
So, I guess to the first part of your question, our project manager, Laura Sharp, is amazing and was able to really activate the community and get tons of folks to come and weigh their input. So I guess that's really why, how the design was informed by the community. And in terms of outcomes, we are currently in the process of working through how to pull data from cameras that were there before and after. But anecdotally, from some folks who are in the neighborhood, they've seen improvements to that intersection. I think I don't remember what the statistic was off the top of my head, but I think speeds were reduced because the turning radius was slightly narrowed by those flex posts. And at the minimum, the flex posts in the middle of the road, it's a technique called centerline hardening. Those helped to make sure that drivers are making proper 90-degree turns, to slow those movements down and also to make pedestrians more visible. So I believe from someone who lives in the neighborhood, they said that they felt that it was better over there. And we're working to really pull data to be able to make more claims about it. So that's pending.
Nobody's knocked over those things that are there in the way so that people, I don't know what you call them, pylons. Are they those
So,
narrow things are sticking up?
yeah.
They seem like they'd be awful easy to knock over if you were.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, they're designed to be hit by a car and be able to stand back up. But
Boing, boing,
we-
boing. Okay.
Yeah.
they
Okay.
survived the entire season. We put them out there at the beginning of the summer, and we just recently took them out as the city snowplow would destroy them.
Yeah.
Until the city gets more of a maintenance plan on how to deal with flex posts and that kind of infrastructure, we take it out in the winter. But they all survived the entire season, which is really great. We ended up getting a really top-notch product. And we have a bunch of stock that Lord S will go out and replace if needed.
They're in the closet right here. I can see them. Yeah. And in the spring, we'll go back out, and the city's operations team helps reinstall the flex posts. So, a lot of things that we've been doing are seasonal right now. And, until either snowplow technology advances or or the city's equipment changes, we have to do that seasonally and then reinstall it back in the spring.
Yeah, my plan is we should have geothermal heating under the streets so that the snow will just
You're
melt.
not far off. Yeah,
I
I
know.
know. Yeah, yeah.
So, as I try to think about whether I would feel like taking on advocating in my town for 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, I guess I want to know whether actually crashes are going on my town's streets because I think they're all on those county and state roads. So, do you have the data broken up in ways that we can talk about what's actually affected by this?
So on our website, we have a pedestrian and cyclist crash map, basically all crashes over the past 10 years. That's from New York State DOT data. And I've actually filed a bunch of FOILs this week, Freedom of Information requests to New York State DOT. And we're hoping that next spring we'll be able to have a map of all crashes reported in New York State DOT involving all vehicles, property damage, etc., that we can hopefully have as another resource for folks. And I guess there is a slight limitation into crash data, just the way we collect crash data in the United States. A lot of crashes will not make it into the system, especially those involving vulnerable road users, such as cyclists and pedestrians. So more often than not, there's more crashes, or there can be more crashes in areas than you'll see on the map. I think you're right to say that maybe the majority of crashes are happening on those major arterial or county or state-owned roadways, but lowering speed limits in residential areas helps to actually match what is there, right? A lot of these streets are single-family housing, and those streets are where people are walking in the street. These are streets where kids are maybe playing in the street, and lowering the speed limits there will match the reality of what we have with safety. So I would pitch it in that light. That regardless on what's happening now, it will lead to safer outcomes for folks who are existing in those streets.
I guess the other way to look at it is if a town made a choice to lower their own speed limits because they're worried about safety and then they aren't getting the results they want because it's county or state, then they will feel motivated to lobby the county or state in a way that they might not have thought about in the first place.
Yeah, as I mean, if the town lowers their speed limits and they do what they can on their infrastructure, and then they go to the state saying like, "Hey, we're doing all we can. We need you to help, and we need you to do traffic calming X, Y, and Z." We all need to be working together, and it's going to take a long time, but I do believe we can all have safe streets, and I do believe we can achieve Vision Zero at some point. I don't think it's going to be in the near term, but we all deserve safe streets, and just lowering speed limits is just one policy solution or one way that we can make our streets safer for all.
It's going to be before Henry retires, but it might not be before I retire. So
So there was a big article, was it in the Washington Post a week or
Yep.
two ago? That
Yeah.
was very discouraging.
And I think that article points to we really need people telling their elected officials that this is a priority. Because we know Vision Zero as a concept works. It's just having the political will to follow through on these things. And that's obviously the challenging part. It's about saying we're going to remove this parking because this is a safety benefit, and really, really focusing on it.
It strikes me that it's a cultural change on the level that drunk driving, used to be just, yeah, it's inevitable and acceptable, and because everyone's late and wants to hurry, and so they just think, oh yeah, yeah, that happens.
Of course, the pervasive idea that, oh, well, speeding is a harmless crime. Well, it's not, and we have to try to change that narrative,
Yeah, exactly.
change behavior.
Speaking of drunk driving, I heard it at taking your eyes off the road to check your phone for like 5 seconds, 6 seconds, that the time it takes to kind of get back to the focus on what you're doing driving they were comparing that to being inebriated and operating a vehicle. It's like
Yeah.
your loss of concentration for that period of time. And I know from like I'm only in my early to mid 40s, but like I know it's much harder for me to do two things at once, um, much to the my dismay of my kids. But driving, and I can't drive and listen to my kids and change to Spotify at the same time. I have to be like, you guys, I'm driving. I can't do that. So I think we're going to start to see that shift, the way that drunk driving was, like you said, with distracted driving, with speeding, because yeah, there are too many safety risks with it.
It is a major issue. There are so many ways to be distracted while driving these days. It didn't exist even 10, 20
Hmm.
years ago. If you're old like me, you learned to drive on a standard transmission vehicle and you went through school related driver training where they warned you that you were driving a huge, dangerous vehicle and your number one job was to pay attention. Nowadays, they're like living rooms and you have screens doing this and things talking to you there, and and you don't have to be deliberately doing something with your coffee or putting on makeup or something like that, or talking to kids in the back seat to be distracted. They're they're all around you.
Mhm.
So wonder there aren't more accidents. I
Yeah, I think that speaks to why we really need to embrace Vision Zero as a nation. It's really the whole system needs to change, right? Because in Helsinki, for example, they have cell phones, but they have European safety standards in their vehicles that prioritize pedestrian safety as well, not just folks in the vehicle, but outside of the vehicle. We don't have
Hmm.
those standards in the US.
Mhm.
Or even inside of the vehicle itself. A lot of the new cars nowadays are giant tablets, right? And there's no tactile buttons to click. In Europe, there's restrictions on having just a giant tablet as what you use to operate your
Oh,
vehicle.
that's very interesting.
I'll throw one more wrench in here. I got a call today from someone in the governor's office asking my opinion about the rollout of autonomous vehicles, Waymos, and all these other things. So I my here's my crystal ball, and I think that New York State is going to authorize autonomous vehicles in this year's legislative session.
Hmm.
They'll probably start down in New York, but there's been a pretty long interest on the part of Google, who operates Waymo, and Amazon, who operates Zoox, and I don't even know what Tesla's thing is called, but there's been an interest to test it out in snowy climates. So, um, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing them, on a small scale in Rochester or Syracuse or Buffalo, shortly after that law is authorized. So, we're going to try to give some input on that, but it's like it's a really new technology, and I think at the bare minimum, we need to have a very clear, strong regulatory framework for evaluating the safety outcomes and making sure that the companies that run these taxis can be held accountable when something goes wrong.
Um, yeah, there was something a minute ago I sparked a question, which I've now forgotten. Um, okay. Anybody else got questions you want to put in here? There's a few cameras off, and Linda, you're sitting there with your camera on. Did you have a question you wanted to ask? Okay. So, I guess, so are you like working at trying to get some town groups together to start lobbying their town boards in different towns? Is that a thing you're working on?
Yeah, that's definitely a next step. We have a small quarterly meeting with suburban advocates. There's also a lot of color your community green groups that have taken
Or
up this interest, and so yeah, feel free to send anyone our way who's interested in traffic safety and might be interested in speaking to their town board.
yeah, I was just gonna say, we have couple of hundred members, and they come from all the towns in Monroe County, and we can send emails to,
Great.
our members who live in whatever town. And so,
Great. We will
if
definitely
if there's
keep that in
particular
mind.
towns you're working on, we'd be happy to see if
Sure.
it
Yeah.
generates some
Perfect.
interest there.
Very good.
Great. Well, I commend you for all the great work you do. I still want to hear about some of these street redos. Like, isn't Lake Avenue supposed to get redone? Isn't Empire Boulevard supposed to get a
Those
road?
are all ones that we're working on, long-term projects. Lake
Yeah.
Ave doesn't have any money attached to it, but it is a big area of concern for the city. And Empire Boulevard has a small amount of just $5 million for some design work that they're doing. So that still needs to be funded for an actual construction project, but definitely something that we're working on.
Oh, I know what I was going to ask. So, at I don't know where I heard that Empire Boulevard was in the works, but since I drive on Empire Boulevard almost every day, that's dear to my heart. So, I ended up. I don't know if it was on a Facebook Penfield group or, someplace like that. And oh, it must have been next door. That's where it was. So somebody was warning everyone that they're talking about, changing all the traffic on Empire Boulevard and why we were able to stop it last year on Bay Road and we'll stop it again. And it's, I mean, they didn't really develop it, but it sounded like it was kind of a MAGA kind of language about our freedom to drive 50 miles an hour on streets with 35 mile speed limits. Do you run into that? Has it become sort of a political football in a party sense?
Um, well, we are, of course, nonpartisan. We're a nonprofit, so
Yeah,
we
totally.
speak to everybody and we work with everybody. Actually, the town supervisor of Pittsford, a Republican, just came and spoke at one of our safety summits, and he's working on the 25 mile an hour thing. So I don't think, I think it should not be a partisan issue. But I will say, I think the MAGA kind of movement has created a culture war condition. They're not in favor of public transportation. They're not in favor of biking. They don't want to. The official position of the Trump administration is they don't want to do any road modifications that would harm the drivers and driving capacity of roads. So it is becoming, harder in some of these conversations. So I dropped in the chat the Empire Boulevard work that we've done. We published a blog post with like an inspirational design, and we're working to advocate with NISDOT to kind of follow that. It would add protected bike lanes and more sidewalks all along Empire Boulevard and reduce the speed limit, do traffic calming, have a crosswalk that's got a big basically a stoplight crosswalk at the park, LaSalle Landing Park. But that's still pretty far off, but that's kind of our vision, and probably your commentator on Nextdoor was referring to our design. And Bay Road was so frustrating because Bay Road is like it's part of the Empire bike trail. The Great Lakes Seaway Trail. That's what it is. And the county proposed a road diet for a large part of it, which would have created a lot of space for cyclists and pedestrians. And there was a lot of pushback from conservative people in the town, and the county ended up doing a kind of a weird compromise where they were only going to do half of it. They kind of like gave up half of it, and they're going to do half of it. But I think the incoming town supervisor in Webster was advocating for the road diet, and I think it's generally an ally of kind of safe streets work. So that could potentially change in Webster as we move forward. But yeah, I really, bottom line, I really don't think this should be a partisan issue. And, I think Republicans like to bike as much as Democrats like to bike.
Well, I don't think childhood vaccines should be partisan, and
Yeah.
yet here we
Well,
are.
here
Yeah.
we are. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So there was a big redo on West Main Street that happened. I don't go over there as often as I used to, and I was just really surprised when I found out how great it had become compared with how it used to be. Were you guys involved in that at all?
Yeah, for sure. That's been, some long work on reimagining that corridor that started probably 2018, 2019. The street project got done this past year. We advocated for the protected bike lanes that eventually went in there. First protected bike lanes in Rochester. And then that project kind of will now extend all the way to Genesee Street, and you've probably heard of Bull's Head and that redevelopment. It's a long, sort of a long process, but I just saw that they started construction on some of the areas. They're going to be redesigning all the streetscape over there. So we're kind of seeing, that whole West Main area as like making it better for slower for traffic, better for pedestrians and buses, protected bike lanes, and then there's a kind of a, what is it, like 3 or 4 foundations that have come up with this West Main Revitalization Fund, and they're investing money in businesses and buildings throughout that corridor. So it's really neat, and that's kind of closer to my neighborhood. I live in the 19th Ward, so it's something I'm following both from a personal and professional
Are
perspective.
you working at all on getting the number of 4-lane highways reduced to 2-lane?
Yeah, so
roads?
that's called a road diet, and that's definitely a policy that we advocate for a lot. I think the one that we're most enthusiastic, or most optimistic about, is Monroe Avenue in Brighton. So from the city line down to the 590 on ramp. The state is very strongly considering doing a road diet on most of it. And there, like I said, when there's federal funds involved right now during this administration, we have to tread a little carefully on that, because they've said they don't want to do road diets that will, adversely harm cars. That said, most candidate roads for road diets already have a low traffic volume, so you're not harming anybody. You're just right sizing the infrastructure so that
Yeah. I
Well,
mean,
Elmwood Avenue, I think, is much improved. That was a very
yeah,
it is a heavily
yeah, it's not as
traveled street.
scary.
that
And
was one of the big
I
ones.
mean,
Yeah.
University Avenue was redone a very long time ago, but it sure
Mhm.
improved when it
Mhm.
was done. So
It's important to note that road diets aren't like a radical measure. It actually improves things for drivers because they
that
have
is,
space
yeah.
to wait when they're turning left.
Mhm.
All right. Well,
Well,
I want to
thank
thank you,
you.
gentlemen, for
I
being
see
with
people are
us,
dropping
and I
off,
hope
and
this will be the first of many chances that we have to talk about issues, and we're definitely interested in all the stuff you're doing. So
well, thank you
think of
for
us.
inviting us,
Yeah.
and we'll be in touch for sure.